Okie dokie, we are at the Tampa Bay Lightning here at Scouching for the 2022 NHL Draft Recap Series. Now, the Lightning were very interesting, and they always have been. They're constantly contenders in the National Hockey League. They draft pretty well-rounded groups of players that have size and skill and speed and all kinds of fun little stuff. And that really took a turn this year, not in a bad way, but drafting Isaac Howard, 31st overall. Look, I'm going to stan Isaac Howard forever. I thought some people didn't like his draft day vibe, his answers to interview questions and such. I loved it. Hockey needs more Isaac Howards. I 100% believe that. I think it's going to be good for the game. I hope he achieves all of his dreams with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I hope the Tampa Bay Lightning got the kind of player that I think Isaac Howard could be. He's rambunctious, he's high-paced, he's high-intensity, needs to ramp things down at times a little bit, but a really good player all in all. I think there's a ton of upside for Isaac Howard, and I think he was underrated by quite a few people this year. Maybe not like a top 15 guy, really, but I definitely think in terms of overall offensive talent, he was close to that. But in terms of his defensive game, that's a bit of a work in progress. Problem solving in transition doesn't really seem to be anticipatory, more reactionary. Which is okay, but tougher to do in the NHL. And I think that this pick could work out really, really well for Tampa Bay Lightning, where at least in terms of point production, we look back on it and go, how did he go 31? Like, some guys that I just do not see the same kind of offensive upside went way ahead of him than at 31. I like Isaac Howard a lot, and at 31, that's a great get. Lucas Edmonds at 86, some people love him. I never have seen it. I've heard people say some stuff about him, about his speed and skill and all that stuff, and I just have not seen it whatsoever. And I've watched a lot of Kingston this year. I don't know. I mean, he played a lot of the time when I was watching him. He was playing with guys like Shane Wright a lot, Francesco Arcuri, guys who I felt were driving the bus a lot more. You know, look, he's you can put him straight into the AHL like right away if you want, or you can send him back to Sweden if that's what you want as well. But I didn't really see much out of Edmonds that I saw other people claiming about him. To me, it's really hard to convince me that a D+3 overage, not even just a 19 turning 20-year-old in the OHL, but a 20 turning 21-year-old in the OHL is worth drafting in the top 100 or really drafting at all. I think he was only draft eligible because he's European, and I think this was his first year in the OHL, and technically, since he was a European player, he's still eligible. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. Tampa Bay got their guy, I guess, at 86, and we'll see what happens with him. Nick Malik at 160. Malik has come and gone over the years in terms of a goalie prospect that teams have their eye on. He was quite highly regarded at one time and kind of had a rough couple of years, and he seems to be sort of finding his footing. He had a pretty good year playing pro hockey in Finland this year, and if he stops pucks, he stops pucks. And at 160, if Tampa gets a guy who can stop pucks and back up Vasilevsky one day, then they've done good jobs. Connor Kurth at 192. Just glad to see him get drafted. I mean, I've watched Connor Kurth for the last 2 years, and I thought he would get drafted last year, and he had a huge year this year in the USHL with Dubuque, was probably the guy driving the bus there the most. And I like Connor Kurth. He's big. He's, in terms of stockiness, he's just he's a heavy but skilled guy who can get around the ice and play hard hockey, while also sort of dangling pucks through opposing defensemen. Just a really interesting player that I would want to see play in college for a few years before really making serious judgments about him, but he's a player who really took a step this year. And I'm curious. He flirted with being on my watch list this year here and there, and I just didn't see as much upside as I thought I would want. And I mean, like, it's the 7th round. If his name came up, I wouldn't say no. Dylan Gill at 223. I watched a bit of him post-draft, had never heard of him beforehand. He's big, physical at times, but I found that he was more reliant on more soft pressure and stick checks. Short strides, but I found him to be pretty rangy, getting around the ice pretty well with crossovers and surveying routes and monitoring pucks defensively and monitoring play. Just a reasonably smart defense-first defenseman who can make a first pass. And if that projects to the NHL, so be it. I don't think there's huge upside with Dylan Gill, but maybe he's just a guy in the NHL at some point, which, again, at 223, if you get anything, you've done good. And Klaus Weinberg's I went and watched him. He's a re-entry player. I had never heard of this player before. I think he's got a decent up and down game along the wing. Not very diverse or agile or mobile, but he gets up and down the ice pretty well. I think there's some tools here, and he has some good puck control when he's kind of shifty on his feet. He's not really agile, but he can be shifty. I want him to be a little more fluid on his feet. I think there could be something here. I don't think there's huge things based on his production and age at this point in his career, but there are some neat tools with Weinbergs, and you get him for 4 years. You get to keep an eye on him, and we'll see what happens with him, or 3 years, I should say, considering he's a re-entry. So, yeah, I mean, Tampa, the crown jewel for me is Isaac Howard. I think at 31, that's a fantastic pickup for them, and you just know that Tampa's going to make sure that he comes along well. And I think that if you think of him as a plug-and-play offensive player that you just play and not worry about offensively and not really think about too much defensively, I think you're going to have a really good pickup there. If you get something out of Lucas Edmonds, great. I'm willing to be wrong. I like the Nick Malek pickup. I really like the Connor Kurth pickup. The rest, I don't think are going to be much. But I do think there's a lot of upside with these picks, or at least some of these picks, and a lot of potential, especially with Isaac Howard, and that's a pretty good pick to have at 31 overall. So I'm giving the Tampa Bay Lightning a 1F. So they're going to go pretty high on my board here. Again, I didn't like them as much as Columbus's draft, but I do like their draft more than Toronto. Still not on par with a team like Washington. I just think the breadth of talent for Tampa Bay is a lot wider based on the players they've drafted. I think Toronto's is much tighter, even if there isn't the same amount of upside with a guy like Howard. But yeah, that's going to do it for Tampa Bay. The next video will be the Calgary Flames. It'll be another pretty quick one. And we're getting down to the home stretch. After today, there's 5 left, and then there'll be a bonus video at the end just for all of you wonderful people that pops up after we're done with the last one. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the video looking at the Calgary Flames, and have a good one.